Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, we're going to be diving into a show that needs no introduction. Well, it kind of does.
Right.
It's Seinfeld.
Yeah.
The show about nothing.
A show about nothing, exactly.
But, as we're going to find out, it was so much more than nothing.
Oh, absolutely. Seinfeld was this incredible phenomenon, and it's amazing how it managed to, bottle the anxieties and the humor of this very specific time. Like that weird shift from, the greed is good 80s to the 90s where everyone's kind of like, well, now what?
Yeah. You had these mega sitcoms like Cosby, right, presenting this very picture-perfect, idealized version of family and all that. And Seinfeld comes along, kind of throws the rule book out the window and says, nah, life's way more complicated and funnier than that.
And people were so ready for it. I mean, shows like Roseanne had already started to kind of pick at that perfect family sitcom image, but Seinfeld just went all in.
It's true.
Like, instead of trying to teach us these big life lessons or having these heartwarming endings, it was just like, let's just dive headfirst into the awkward, the mundane, the stuff that nobody wants to talk about, but everyone deals with.
All right, so picture this, right? It's 1989, the Berlin Wall's coming down, shoulder pads are, thankfully, on their way out. Grunge music is just starting to bubble up. And right in the middle of all this change, Seinfeld premieres. What a time to be alive.
And it's interesting because Seinfeld wasn't like an instant smash hit or anything.
Right.
Like, it took a few seasons to really find its groove, which I guess makes sense because it was breaking all the rules.
Yeah. It was like, who are these self-absorbed New Yorkers?
Yeah.
And why should I care about, their bad dates and coffee orders?
But see, that's just it, right? That's the brilliance of it. It captured something very specific about that time, but also something very universal about, just being human and dealing with crap.
And that's where Seinfeld really hit its stride. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It wasn't afraid to just go there. Like, hey, remember that time you found a hair in your soup? Or it got cornered by a double dipper at a party? Yeah, we're going to make a whole episode about that.
Exactly. It totally embraced this, no hugging, no learning kind of vibe.
I love that. No hugging, no learning.
Right. These characters were not trying to be better people.
Yeah.
They were flawed, they were selfish, sometimes they were just plain neurotic, but that's what made them so relatable.
Oh, totally, totally. And it was like they gave everyone permission to just laugh at the absurdity of everyday life. It's like, who hasn't had a soup Nazi experience?
Right.
Or run into a close talker on the subway? Seinfeld, just put it all out there.
No, don't even get me started on the catchphrases. Yada, yada, yada. No soup for you. Master of my domain. Those phrases, they just seeped into our brains.
They did. It's true. It's true.
Seinfeld wasn't just a show. It was a shared experience.
That's such a good point. I remember watching it with my friends every week. And then the next day at school or whatever, we would just dissect every little detail, every awkward moment. It was like we were practically living in that apartment with them.
And you know what else I loved about Seinfeld? It wasn't afraid to get a little weird. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
It pushed the boundaries of what you could do in a sitcom.
Absolutely. From Jerry's constant dating disasters to Elaine's dancing, which, let's be real, was his own form of chaos.
Oh, absolutely.
And then there's George, right? Struggling with basically, existing.
George. Oh, man, George. He was just a walking disaster.
A walking, talking disaster. But then there's Kramer, right? I mean, talk about a wild card.
Oh, my God. Kramer.
He was pure chaotic energy in human form.
You never knew what was going to happen next when that door swung open. But here's the thing, right? As crazy as some of the stuff they got into was, it always felt kind of, real.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
It was rooted in something true about, how people actually behave.
Yeah, totally. They took these little tiny everyday moments, the stuff we usually try to ignore, and they blew it up into this, hilarious commentary on, being human.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's why Seinfeld connected with people on such a deep level. It wasn't just about the jokes, right? It was about seeing ourselves, all our flaws and insecurities reflected back at us.
And, isn't it kind of wild that even after all these years, decades later, Seinfeld still holds up? Those anxieties, those awkward encounters, that sense of, wait, is this really my life? It's all still so relevant.
It really is. It's amazing that they managed to capture something so specific about the 90s, but also something so universal about, just being alive and trying to figure things out.
So we've talked about the characters, the humor, the impact it had. But what about, the legacy of Seinfeld? How did it change the game for television?
Well, I mean, for one thing, it pretty much paved the way for this whole new wave of sitcoms, shows that weren't afraid to be different.
Yeah. Yeah, I see it.
I mean, think about it, right? Friends, Curb Your Enthusiasm, even The Office. In a way, they all owe a little something to Seinfeld.
It's true. They took that Seinfeld DNA, the whole ensemble cast, the quirky characters, the way they focus on the everyday instead of some big dramatic plot, and just, like, ran with it.
Yeah, but it wasn't just about the content of the show, right? It was the way they made it, too. Like using those stand-up segments or the way they would just break the fourth wall and talk directly to the audience.
Oh, yeah. They were meta before meta was even a thing.
Exactly. And we can't forget about the fashion, like Jerry's sneakers,
Yeah.
Elaine's power suits, even Kramer's, well, whatever he was wearing. It all became iconic.
It's crazy how this show that was supposedly about nothing ended up influencing, like, everything.
I know. It's like it wasn't just a TV show. It was this whole reflection of who we were and in a lot of ways, who we still are today.
You know what's interesting, too, is that for a show that was ostensibly about nothing, Seinfeld wasn't afraid to, like, touch on some pretty real social issues, even if it was in this, like, subtle, kind of sideways way.
Totally. They dealt with things like race, religion, gender, even class sometimes, but always through the lens of these like flawed and often kind of clueless characters.
Exactly. It was never preachy, never tried to hit you over the head with a message. It was always funny first, and then, maybe it made you think a little bit afterwards, which is like a really tough thing to pull off.
It really is. It's a testament to the writing that they could be so funny and still make you think about stuff at the same time.
Yeah, totally. So I guess to wrap it up, it's safe to say that Seinfeld was way more than just a sitcom. It was this, like, full-blown cultural phenomenon that changed the way we think about TV. And it's still making us laugh all these years later.
That's funny, right? Like, Seinfeld was a show about nothing, but somehow it managed to say so much about, like, just being a person in the world. It's like they took all those little anxieties we all have and spun them into comedy gold.
That's it, right.
Mhm.
That's the brilliance of the show. It wasn't really about four friends hanging out in New York. It was about the human condition,
Oh.
our little quirks, the dumb stuff we do. They made it universal. Okay, so as we wrap up our Seinfeld deep dive here, I want to know, like, why do you think this show still resonates with people after all these years? What is it about these characters, their neuroses, that keeps us laughing decades later?
I think it's because deep down we see a little bit of ourselves in Jerry, Elaine, George, and even Kramer, right? They're not perfect people, not even close. They can be selfish, petty, they make terrible choices, but that's what makes them relatable.
It's true. We've all been there, right? Done something totally selfish or stuck our foot in our mouth. Seinfeld just, like, zoomed in on those moments and made them hilarious.
Exactly. And, I think in a world that feels like it's constantly getting crazier and more overwhelming, there's something kind of comforting about revisiting a show that reminds us it's okay to laugh at ourselves a little bit.
Totally. Sometimes you just got to embrace the absurdity.
Right.
Absolutely. Seinfeld taught us that, hey, life doesn't always make sense. There's not always a neat little answer, and that's fine. Sometimes you just got to shrug your shoulders, grab a bowl of cereal, and roll with it.
And maybe find a little humor in the chaos, right?
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
So next time you're feeling stressed, remember to channel your inner Jerry, Elaine, George, or maybe even a little Kramer. Embrace the no hugging, no learning philosophy. And remember, sometimes the best way to deal with life's little annoyances is to just laugh at them.
And hey, you might even find your new favorite catchphrase along the way.
And on that note, we'll leave you with this. What seemingly insignificant event in your life could use a Seinfeld makeover? Think about it. We guarantee there's comedic gold to be mined in the mundane. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.